This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast presented by PointsBet. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. That code again, CHGO, when you sign up at PointsBet. Hello, everyone. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan, and we are coming to you on Wednesday, April 20th. The Cubs drop the series with the Tampa Bay Rays. A rain-induced loss tonight, Brendan, but it was not looking good. I like to believe in the comeback Cubs. They've shown a lot of fight.
Yes.
But this
Not
one was
tonight.
probably getting away from them.
Now, speaking of looking good, let's see that shirt. Come on. I mean, you're bearing the lead. Look at that shirt, Corey.
Hey, Chicago, what do you say?
I love it. That's an obvious shirt, right?
That is an obvious shirt. Yes.
All right, good for you. Well, at least Seiya's still looking good. They dropped the series, but
a hitless game. The world is ending, Brendan.
What are we going to do? Well, it doesn't really count because the game didn't really finish, so it doesn't count. Just throw it away.
Right, but he did walk, so he is still getting on base, continuing his on-base streak. But we are going to break down these 3 games as usual. There was a lot of good stuff going on. There was some bad stuff. We'll talk about it all. And we are hoping to be joined by Ryan Herrera live from beautiful, historic Wrigley Field. He is, of course, the beat writer for CHGO and the Cubs, and he is talking to David Ross and the players as we speak. So hoping to get some Clubhouse insights from him at some point. He will join us when he is available. But generally, Brendan, before we just do like a quick, run through of what happened in these games, it's an interesting place to be. I think that coming into this season, the expectations were pretty measured for a lot of people, pretty low for this team. And yet I think a lot of us found ourselves feeling like they should have won this series with a Tampa team that has been really good for the last several years.
Yeah, well, the plate approaches still look really good. Of course, that's being led by Seiya and the on-base percentage and the contact rate and everything. But you saw Ross be aggressive. We'll get into it, but be aggressive with some of his pinch hit choices. And overall, they hung in there. And I know the start by Stroman wasn't the best tonight. Weather conditions are brutal, but you still saw a lot of the same features that were appealing in the first couple of series by the Cubs persist over against a really good quality team here.
Yeah, so once again, I think you're going to be tasked with talking people down about, some
it's
shorter...
2 starts. It's 2 starts. Corey.
Yeah, and Kyle Hendricks looked better, but, only 4 1/3 there. So, your duty at this point seems to be telling people to relax about
which is dangerous because usually it's the other way around. So I don't know why I'm the one telling people to relax. So I can't do that for myself, but you know what? Okay, I'll try.
It's a new year. We're part of a new, CHGO, new brand.
I know.
Optimism, freshness, right?
It's unfamiliar for me, Corey, but I'm trying my best.
Yes. Well, anyway, let's do a quick, reminder of what happened in these 3 games. As always, just like to set the table. I will keep it brief. On Monday, it was a 4-2 win. Kyle Hendricks, 4 1/3, 5 hits, 2 earned, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. So a better start from Kyle, albeit a shorter one, 90 pitches in that one. Another really strong piggyback from Keegan Thompson, who is, quickly, at least in the early going here, becoming one of the most important pitchers on this Cubs staff. 3 2/3, just 1 hit, 1 walk, and 5 strikeouts for Keegan Thompson, picking up his 2nd win of the year. David Robertson, a really nice inning for his 4th save. So that has also been a really nice start to the season for Robertson. And this one is won on homers from, your new Brizzo, right? Wisdom and Schwindel, both homering in this one. So there you go. On Tuesday, it was a 6-5 loss. Justin Steele with a short outing, just 2 2/3, 3 hits, 4 earned runs, 3 walks, and 1 strikeout. So obviously not a great outing from Justin Steele. Picks up his first loss of the year. Patrick Wisdom also homering in this one in a situation that we will talk about and hopefully can ask Ryan about. Pinch hits for Jason Hayward in the 4th inning and hits a home run. There's a lot to kind of dissect there, a lot of it good from David Ross. The Cubs looked like they were going to fight in this one, trailed by a few runs multiple times, kind of crept their way back, but they couldn't get it done in the 9th. It was a 6-5 loss. And then on Wednesday, again, this one called in the bottom of the 6th. the Rays winning this one 8-2 to take the series. Marcus Stroman, just not a good outing. Brendan will break that down in excruciating detail, I'm sure. 4 1/3, 8 hits, 8 runs, 7 of them earned, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, though, and a really nice defensive play on the mound. But obviously that is not enough to get it done. In this one, the Cubs scoring their runs on Wednesday, a Schwindel double and a Nick Madrigal groundout. So that is the story of the series here. And yeah, Brendan, like, this is one of those series where I think losing 2 or 3 to this Tampa team coming off another 100-win season, like they put together a really good team without spending a ton of money every year, it seems. But this felt like a winnable series for the Cubs. Like you really felt like they could have taken 2 out of 3 here.
You do. Now, does your expectations or have your expectations changed a little bit since the season started? Not to put words in your mouth, but when we talk, you sound a little pessimistic. But seeing the lineup, don't give me that. But seeing some of the decisions being made, has it changed your thinking process? I mean, I think, like, taking a step back, we all have realistic expectations, which is 75 to 80 wins. If you're lucky, maybe 82 plus, you kind of sneak into a playoff spot. But just given what you've seen for the first, 12 games here, does it change your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, look, like I think you take things on a nightly basis, and like Tuesday was a good example where they showed a lot of fight, and that's one of the keys. Again, tonight the loss, they didn't get a chance to try the comeback, if you will. But you felt like they're in all of these games, and you feel like they have a chance, especially like with the amount of contact they're making, the way they're getting on base. So yeah, like I think coming into the season, if you had told me they lost 2 or 3 to the Rays at Wrigley, I would have been like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Right.
Watching this series though, I'm a little disappointed. I felt like they could have won this series.
Yeah. So we have a comment from the Dash Law telling you, Corey, to stop being such a pessimist.
Right.
Yes.
Me, ever the pessimist. Yes.
I'm going to screenshot this. Like,
I think I've predicted this team to win 110 games every spring training except for this one. So you'll have to forgive me. Yeah.
The 1 year.
But I do also that, we might as well, before we get into some of the specifics that happen in this series, we might as well get to a comment that Nick G had in the YouTube comments here. If you're watching us on Twitter, come on over to YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. It helps us out over at CHGO Sports. Yeah, the Cubs making a trade. Jesse Chavez is out. His reunion with the Cubs was a very quick one. And the Cubs getting former first-round pick Sean Newcomb, left-hander from the Atlanta Braves. He was recently DFA'd. And if you guys have listened to Brendan and I for any amount of time, and you know Brendan at all, I got a "dude, I love this" text message within 30 seconds of this deal going down. Nobody loves a DFA'd, starter with bad numbers more than Brendan Miller, because he's you found something to be intrigued by.
It gives me something to do. Like, I don't really like watching good players because they're just boring. They're just too good. So when I get these players that kind of have some issues, it makes it more interesting. But yeah, thanks for that face. But we can just rip into it. Like, Newcomb's numbers suck. His walk rate last year was really bad. He was walking guys this year. This is a walk rate around 7 guys per 9 innings. But he does have interesting underlying pitch peripherals. And this is what the Cubs do. This is what Tommy Hotovy does. It's what Daniel Moskowitz is now doing, trying to take some of these pitches and make them a little bit better. We're seeing that with Daniel Norris implementing that sweeping slider. For Newcomb, he already has the stuff. So if we throw up perfect. So if we throw up this spin axis graph, and you're looking at this on YouTube or watching live on Twitter, if you're just listening to the feed, you can go see this. But what you're looking at here is a clock with each pitch at a certain time colored. So those big bars at noon are fastballs. And you're looking at a huge bar around noon, which is the spin axis, which is showing that Newcomb's fastball has some natural carry on it. And if we look at the expected vertical drop on that pitch, it's better than league average. Now, if you go to around 5 to 6 o'clock, you're looking at a curveball. And that curveball, Corey, has an insane amount of movement. So he has 61 inches of vertical drop, and that is well above league average. And this type of signature, this fastball around noon, curveball around 6 o'clock, very reminiscent of what Rowan Wick does. And Rowan Wick started using that spike curveball a few years ago, and he saw the results from it. So with Newcomb, the stuff is already there, but for some reason, the command has been really, really poor. And I don't know why that's the case. Obviously, that's going to be a point of emphasis for this Cubs pitching infrastructure to improve. That way you can actually get the most out of those types of pitches. But in general, you give up Jesse Chavez, who's older, who is unpredictable as a result of his age. And you're seeing some potential in Sean Newcomb, who's not going to be a free agent until 2026. And if it doesn't work out and he can't get his command together, it's okay. It kind of sucks because we want to get more stable relievers. But you do see the potential there. And he was a former starter. He might be able to go multiple innings. He has dealt with a few minor injuries here in the past, but the stuff is there. 6'5". You saw the curveball spin rate. You saw this curveball spin access. The spin rate, it just in general is in the 90th percentile. So he has everything that makes sense from a pitch peripheral standpoint. Now it's just trying to make the most of it. And the Cubs have had success doing that in the past few years.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Jesse Chavez in his first run with the Cubs was great. He was one of the most important relievers, on that team. But he was not good in spring training, and he got better results in this series against the Rays. But still, it's rockets off the bat every time. He doesn't appear to be fooling anybody. So, yeah, the risk is pretty low. You get a 28-year-old former first-round pick. He was taken 15th overall in the MLB draft, and you hope a change of scenery. And yeah, like Brendan is saying, you get him in the lab with these guys who have kind of proven to be able to tinker a little bit. Seems like a pretty low stakes.
I mean, you may not even have to tinker with them, though. Like, the stuff is already there. We've seen pitchers in the past tinker with their pitches to improve that spin rate or that movement. It's already there for Newcomb. So the tinkering might be in the form of how do you sequence better? How do you get the most out of his command? That's where the changes might end up being useful for him. And again, if it doesn't work out, Chavez's velocity was down 1.5 miles. Again, he's older. As you pointed out, Corey, rockets off the bat in the first few appearances. So the risk is relatively mild. It's like there's basically no risk here. There's only reward. And I think it's interesting. Nonetheless, it's still interesting.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's always interesting to have breaking news on the podcast. This wouldn't have been like emergency podcast worthy, but it is always interesting.
I would have done an emergency
on Sean Newcomb.
Oh yeah, man.
Okay,
absolutely.
In the middle of a Bulls playoff game, sure.
Yeah, why not?
So I want to talk about some of the good stuff that we've seen in this series, and I actually think we've got a comment from Rocklos. I hope I'm saying that correctly in the YouTube comments. We might as well start there. David Robertson has been really good for this team. And we've talked about him and Gibbons and the role that these two might have. But David Robertson has 4 saves on the young season. And he, we talked a lot, between you and I, and also with Cody and Luke and Ryan, about trusting the Cubs and their ability to put a bullpen together. Now, it's not always going to work. Jesse Chavez obviously didn't work, and they shipped him out. Chris Martin has struggled a little bit. So sometimes it doesn't always start perfectly, but you have to be pretty thrilled with what you're seeing from David Robertson in a guy who has closer experience and who dealt with some injuries, but looks healthy and is getting really nice results, Brendan.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So comment, as you guys see there, can we talk about Robertson's cutter? So we're going to do this live. If we go to Baseball Savant, the first thing I do when I look at these pitches is just look at the amount of movement that the pitch generates. So, to Rocco's point about the cutter, the movement this year is around 8 inches of vertical movement, which is 40% better than your league average. The amount of horizontal movement is actually below league average by about twofold, interestingly, but it's being thrown at 93 miles per hour. And so it's not going to be as tight of a horizontal moving type pitch. But it's had success in years past. Now, interestingly, the amount of movement that's being generated by that pitch is a little bit unexpected. So it starts off being thrown around 130, if you envision this clock. And then for some reason, it does kind of deviate back to around noon. So it looks out of the hand, kind of like a deceiving pitch. And it looks as if it might move horizontally more than you expect, but it kind of just stays there at around 93 miles per hour, and which is probably why it's having success and probably why it had success when he was younger.
Yeah, but again, it's we trust the Cubs to put together bullpens like this for a reason, and this appears to be, look, it's early, but the results have been really good, and I think it's really important, given how this staff is composed, and especially when you have starters not really going deep into games yet. It's important for David Ross to have some of these guys where he can kind of lock them into roles and be really confident in the way that he's going to use them. And David Robertson has certainly provided that. Another guy we talked about, and I know Cody and Luke talked about it on Monday after the outing, and you and I talked about it after he piggybacked Steele in Colorado, I think. But this is such a good role for Keegan Thompson.
Yeah, man.
And it's really exciting to watch. I think I've said on here before that I know, like, he's one of those guys, along with Alec Mills, who likely wants to be a starter, and maybe the Cubs decide to explore that again. He's certainly pitching in a manner that, if that's the opportunity he wants, I think he's showing you that, maybe you let him try that. But this role, as we saw in the World Series last year with Atlanta and Houston, speaking of Jesse Chavez opening games, it's so important to have these guys who can come in and not just give you one inning of solid work, but can really bridge that gap to your higher leverage relievers. And Thompson just looks so good. I mean, he was dominant on Monday night against this Rays offense.
Yeah, he looks really good. Not much has changed from last year. His cutter still moves well above league average horizontally. The velocity is still within his typical range. The curveball is off the charts, similar to last year, just going down like a hammer. And you're seeing the command a little bit better this year. And the attitude he had last year is carrying over to this year with even more confidence, which I love seeing. So I like the role he's in right now as is, given those pitches that he throws, that cutter, that curveball. He does have a four seam around 93 to 96, can pump it up when the adrenaline's up. But we've talked about this. I like the role he's in because you can go multiple innings. And having the ability to piggyback, whether it be Justin Steele or let's say even Drew Smiley, guys who can't really go at this point, maybe beyond 5 or 6 innings, it's incredibly valuable. And maybe he can't get an opportunity to start later in the year, but at least just from my opinion, the types of pitches he throws right now are best served only facing the lineup once or twice. He doesn't have a quality pitch at this point that moves the opposite direction of his cutter and his curveball. And a lot of pitchers who are able to go through the order multiple times can change up those angles a little bit more often than someone like Keegan Thompson. And Justin Steele, to be fair, kind of has the same problem, but he is more confident throwing that changeup at times. And he does have a sinker that he did, especially towards the end of last year, showcase as his dominant pitch, which is, of course, going to move the opposite way. So that's the difference between the two as it stands now. I mean, Keegan Thompson's been amazing, but that role he's in, I think, is perfect at this point.
Yeah, and Niran in the YouTube comments makes a point about, this is kind of what a new age pitching staff looks like, potentially Steele, Thompson, Alzolay, maybe all occupying roles like this in the future.
Yeah.
And it really is the way that baseball seems to be going, right? The amount of data that these teams have has made it seemingly much harder to have guys that can go through a lineup 3 or 4 times, pitch into that 7th, 8th, or 9th inning, right? You just see it less. There's guys you seem to be relying on to do that less. And even you look at this Cubs rotation, like we know that historically at times, Hendricks has struggled when you get to the 3rd or 4th time through an order. We Drew Smyly? Is that a guy who you can really maximize 2 times through the order, be that 3, 4, 5 innings, whatever it is. And then you want to bring in a different look because you don't expect those guys to continue to be able to mow down these hitters as they see them the 3rd or 4th time. Obviously, you would love for your guys to be able to go deeper into games and stuff like that. But I think this is where the game of baseball seems to be headed. And to have these guys you can rely on to come out and, like you're saying, Brendan, their stuff plays up when it's 1 or 2 times through the order. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a knock on Keegan Thompson. This is a very valuable role. And when you watch the playoffs, right, a lot of playoff games are short starts for just this reason. Now, over the course of a long season, especially when you're playing a team like the Rays, who you don't see that often, they maybe aren't going to be as dialed in on your pitchers, right? But in the playoffs, you're honed in. You spend all that time looking at the data. You need to be able to bring in guys earlier in games and sub guys out. So I think the fact that the Cubs are trying Thompson in this role, he's succeeding, and you might have other guys who succeed in this, I think it's really important going forward.
It is. Okay, a break from our sponsor. Corey, you know this. The best way to support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app and use code CHGO when you sign up. If you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. If you have any questions, email pointsbet@allchgo.com, and we will help you out. Remember that PointsBet is your home for live in-game betting. They even have a new exclusive feature, live NBA same-game parlay. For the first time ever, build a perfect live same-game parlay only with PointsBet. Combine your favorite bets anytime during the game. You can even boost your live same-game parlays. And now online sign-up is available in Illinois. You can actually download the PointsBet app right now and register your account from start to finish, all from your phone. Signing up with the fastest sportsbook is now easier than ever, so you can start living your bet life in seconds. Use code CHGO to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Okay. Second sponsor here is from Strava Craft Coffee. Want to start your day with a competitive edge? Strava CBD coffee is a game changer and has helped thousands of people to improve their overall wellness and quality of life. Strava delivers delicious, fresh roasted specialty coffee infused with organic spectrum CBD. CBD from hemp doesn't make you high or hungry, but it does offer real benefits that can help you out. You can feel alert and focused without the jitters. You can live your day more balanced with less anxiety and fewer aches and pains. Plus, including CBD in your daily routine can even help you enjoy more restful sleep so you can wake up feeling your best. The best part, Strava is all about quality. Everything is small batch, fresh, and shipped straight to your door. Strava also offers concentrated full spectrum CBD tinctures for those looking for a more traditional CBD format with a powerful entourage effect of benefits. CHGO listeners can save 25% off their entire purchase when you use code CHGO25. That's 25% off your entire order at StravaCraftCoffee.com when you use code CHGO25 at checkout. Discount coupon valid on non-subscription purchases. Only one use per customer. Already love Strava? Subscribe and save with the Strava Coffee Club. With Strava, you're in control. Save on your favorite coffees and have them automatically delivered to your home or office on your preferred schedule. That's like reading, in like second or third grade. You don't want to mess up in front of the class. That's what I felt like I was doing right now. So I think I did pretty good there, Corey.
The live stuff is hard. Yeah,
it's hard.
Hey, Brendan, it's Lawrence. Yeah. You did a great job, and I just want to hop in on your PointsBet read. Yeah. One of the best parts about PointsBet is that you could do live in-game betting, like you mentioned. The Bulls are currently up 6 in Milwaukee. Now, if you're like me, you'd say, well, maybe I think the Bucks are going to win this game. I know I'm wearing a Bulls hat, and I know I want the Bulls to win, but let's be realistic. This might be tough. You could get the Bucks right now -4.5 at the spread. And -4.5, that's a pretty good number. I don't know, not a bad option. Or if you're feeling just like the money line, -200, that's way better than the -600 that it was earlier. So just going to throw it in there. And guess what, guys? We have a special guest. I'm going to hop out of the way. Ryan Herrera is waiting for you. So
we've got Ryan here from beautiful historic
Look
Wrigley
at
Field.
him.
Can you hear us, Ryan?
Hello. Yeah, I got you guys. You hear me?
Ryan,
Yes.
are you dry? Is it pouring out there or what?
I mean, it's hard with the press box window. Sometimes you can't even looking on the field, you can't see. So I think it's still raining out there. It was definitely raining enough that they called the game. Obviously, I wish it would have gotten called earlier, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
I was going to say for you, I've spent many a night at the ballpark, not interviewing the players, but I think you're probably taking, a pre 9:30 cancellation, because I was half expecting them to try to get back out there. We play in the mud for an hour and they drag this on until midnight or something.
Oh yeah, I think some people were hoping or expecting a just cancellation in general earlier in the day. The start up, or moving the game time start up made a lot of sense because the Rays don't come back to Chicago. And they definitely don't want to come back to Chicago for like one game. But yeah, I guess calling it early helped out a little bit, but it's still almost 10 o'clock. We're not out of here yet. So,
we will try not to keep you forever, but we haven't talked about Marcus Stroman yet, so I'm sure you were just down there and talking to Ross, and I know Stroman was speaking to the media as well. Obviously not the start he was hoping for. The conditions no good, so that's not going to help. But did Marcus offer anything up about this start tonight?
Yeah, and you kind of saw last start too. Just he was a little I think his start kind of later in the game is when he started to in Colorado is when he started to kind of find that struggle. This time, he kind of started, he felt off, and maybe got a little better as he was getting going. But he was just saying that right now he just the mechanics is just not there yet. That you see in the last couple of starts that he said he'll feel good for a couple pitches and then he'll feel off, and then he'll feel good for a batter or two and then feel off. He said this is not. It's not synonymous. It's not mechanically. He's just not consistent. So he said, I got to go back. Go look in the mirror, do some dry stuff, just kind of see what's going on. Maybe watch some video and see what's going on. Because he said he can't. He's trying to make the adjustments out there, and it's just still just not working. And you can kind of see. He's again started. Got a little better after that first inning. I think it was 32 pitches to start. But yeah, oh man, is there a car chase outside of someone's window right now?
That would be me.
Coming for you. I thought they were coming for Ryan. Tell him to get out of Wrigley.
I was going to say Ryan and I are pretty close, even if we're not in the same building. So I'm thinking that's the streets of Los Angeles getting that.
Sorry. Yeah. Well,
I was just going to say, so, I think you don't get any sense of concern or anything like that from Stroman, just stuff he's got to iron out and long season here.
Yeah. And then he won't say the shortened spring or any of that stuff kind of mess with him, but it could have, and maybe just not having all the reps needed through a spring. I know he's kind of said since the beginning, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start the season. I feel like I'm ready to start the season. But it's maybe not having all the reps in spring. Maybe that affected him, because obviously I think right now would be in a regular spring would be the last week of spring training. So maybe it's just the repetitions. He doesn't have all of them yet. He's still just kind of getting there. But he won't use that as an excuse. Obviously, he says he takes accountability for it. So that was just 2 bad starts. He's going to go back in there, kind of try to figure out what's going wrong with him mechanically, try to shore that up. And then he said, again, 2 bad starts, but he expects to be better, a lot better going forward. So, again, he's not making excuses. He knows he's had 2 bad starts in a row, and he's just got to figure out what's working. Yeah, just nothing of concern, just mechanics, just trying to figure out what's going wrong with him when he's out there. Because he said his midweek bullpen looked great. Everyone, everything was good. And he felt good, and then he got out there today, and there could be outside factors, weather maybe, weather was obviously terrible today. That could have affected something, but he just said 2 bad starts. I'm going to go back in there, look at the video, figure out what's going wrong, and get better from here. So ability for that.
His start was interesting because as you're looking at how the game's developing, you can kind of tell by the second inning, the slider was more or less scrapped. He only threw 9 sliders tonight. And then he started using more splitters as the game progressed and started getting more whiffs as a result. And he actually led all of his pitches with a splitter. So he threw the majority of his 5 pitches were splitters followed by sinker. So in the first couple of starts, it was a little bit of a different type of repertoire. So I just wonder if he didn't have the feel for the slider. And the ones that were thrown were just basically thrown center in. And, he didn't have his pitch. He didn't have his the ability to go cross angle with the slider tonight. And it happens. I mean, it's like, 30, 40, 50 degrees out there in Chicago? I don't know how you guys deal with that. Like, I can't even walk outside in that weather, let alone throw a baseball, especially when it's wet. And then he just went to Denver. It is nice. And then he was just in Denver, last week. The altitude up there is like the moon. So you have these two types of extremes where you're trying to judge a new pitcher and doing so in a shortened spring training when they're trying to get ramped up. And he's a veteran. And we've seen guys in the past, it does take time to get in rhythm. Marcus is saying, hey, I need to get into rhythm. And his pitch peripherals all look within line of his career range. So the fact that there's no extremes and his peripherals look good, you can put weight on these first 3 starts if you want, but does that make sense? Is that more predictable than the other stuff? I don't think it is.
Yeah, I don't know. And I know we kind of look at it in the sinker. He's trying to establish that, and a lot of the misses, a lot of lefties in the lineup too. So maybe he's trying to take that away, and then just kind of missing at arm side. When you look at like his illustrator on Baseball Savant or whatever, you may be able to get a little better. You're our pitch doctor, but even like Ross was saying, like a lot of the misses that he saw were kind of going arm side to the lefties, which you look at this, you look at the pitch chart, and that's what it tells, right? So again, he says he's going to go back in, he's going to watch the video, he's going to do all this stuff and try to figure out what it is. Maybe I don't know. I'm not Marcus Stroman. I'm not Tommy Hotovy. I don't have the video in front of me, so I can't tell you exactly what it is. But it's just something that he's he's not concerned about. He knows it's just something that he's got to figure out, and he believes he'll do that, which for the Cubs would obviously be a good thing if he does.
Yeah, so I kind of a piggyback. We have a comment from Stan about VR at third tonight. Obviously, it was a messy game. The Cubs make 3 errors in this one, a couple of balls that got by VR at third. I'm curious if Ross has talked at all, Ryan, about I don't want to say the team has been sloppy on the whole, but their base running numbers are lower than we've seen in years past. I think they're rating negatively if you use like some of the fan graphs, like base running metrics, out on the bases. 3 errors tonight. Have they talked about that at all? Like stuff that they want to clean up or any? Because I feel like it's a little uncharacteristic of some teams that we've seen. The Cubs in the past. Obviously, it's a new group, but some of it just feels a little uncharacteristic.
Yeah, I mean, he's talked about it a little bit, and I know actually today Gordon Wittenmeyer put out something over at NBC Sports Chicago talking about like I think the Cubs had only made 1 error going into today, which is like low among a lot of the team or most of Major League Baseball. And then they go 3 errors today, 2 throwing errors from Jan, which one of them could have been, maybe
I think they were probably both on VR, but yeah.
They were counted as 2 throwing errors to Jan Gomes, and then VR had a throwing error over to first. And as far as base running stuff, I know one thing that comes to mind was like, I think it was in Colorado when he got thrown out. Like, I think it was a Blackman out in right field called the ball, and Sayers kind of got crossed up on the base pass and got thrown out at first for the double play. He hasn't talked about it too much. Not that the error numbers maybe kind of hid that. I guess they had the 1 error coming into today. I'm sure we could dig into that a little bit more with him. No, he hasn't discussed it as far as like, it's just something that, they need to talk about, especially with, again, that one with Seiya. It's just something they need to talk about. Again, he's getting adjusted to things. It's not anything that he's too concerned about as far as like, it's not being brought up too much. It's clearly the defensive, as if you look at error as the be all end all of defense, which isn't probably the correct way to do it, but that wasn't too high or anything. Yeah, it's 11 games into the season. If trends like that continue, I'm sure that's we'll have to get addressed more as the season goes along. So that's maybe next week we'll have a better answer for you.
Yeah. Ryan, do you get, not to put words in your mouth, but do you get a sense of urgency when you listen to David Ross with some of the decisions he's made? He's been a little aggressive, for example, pinch hitting for Jason Hayward in the second game. I know that center field position, he put Patrick Wisdom out there when he did pinch hit with Jason Hayward. And we've seen in the first game, 4 guys were used in that 7th lineup spot, which is where center field was. Pinch hitting Clint Frazier, then he substituted Ortega out there. So from, my perspective, that looks pretty urgent. And I'm wondering if there's any type of, whether it be explicit words or just feel on your end, if that's something that's really emphasized by the coaching staff, is having that flexibility, especially in center field, and that urgency early on.
Well, yeah, definitely the flexibility. Ross has talked about it consistently, like guys being able to be flexible and be versatile. Like you mentioned, the Wisdom going out to center field and stuff like that. I know yesterday the opener, the Rays throwing an opener at the Cubs was a unique situation, and so he let Jason Hayward take that first at bat, and then he saw a matchup that he liked with Patrick Wisdom, and so he pinch hit, and obviously it worked out. And then we kind of asked him, Patrick Wisdom in center field. He had one game in AAA at center field in the past, so it's not like it's his natural position. But he said, he talked to Willie Harris. Willie Harris was confident in Wisdom Wisdom in the outfield. Wisdom was confident that he could play if that's where they wanted to put him. So Ross let him go out there and didn't make any errors or anything. So he's like, when we do stuff like that, Ross said that this morning, when you do stuff like that, are you going to get the elite defense? You're going to get the elite defense that some other players can get you? No, but you're going to get, he's able to keep Patrick Wisdom in the lineup that way without having too many moving parts. But as far as versatility, we talked about Jonathan Villar, didn't have his best day in the field today. But him being able to move from third to shortstop to second, that especially early in the season when guys are still getting their legs under them, that allows him to give Nigel Horner a day, that allows him to give Nick Madrigal a day, that allows him to give Patrick Wisdom a day. And that's what he really likes. And then the outfield spot, again, Jason Hayward, Rafael Ortega, Michael Hermosillo, those guys move around the outfield a ton, and obviously Hermosillo brings a righty bat, whereas Ortega and Hayward are lefty. Clint Frazier being able to play out in left field, because I think Hap was DH today, yeah. So that allows Hap to get a day where he just has the bat. I don't know if I would say, I think you said urgency earlier in the day, or not earlier in the day, earlier, that was early in the question. You said urgency. I don't know if that's the word I would use. It's just David Ross really values versatile players, and you see that a lot with a lot of the guys on the team that can play a lot of positions. And so when you see stuff like Patrick Wisdom going out to center field, VR moving all around the infield, Ortega, Hayward, using 4 guys at the 7 and center field, that's just him. Again, one, making sure that guys are, he's not overworking everyone and getting guys the reps that they need to kind of get into the season, and 2, just really testing out and seeing what he's got in a lot of these guys that he wants to be, that he knows are versatile players, but seeing how well they can do when they kind of put him in that situation.
Well, so one follow-up on that, Ryan, and then we can let you get out of here and head home not too late here. But do you get the sense, obviously a lot of the players, you kind of expect them to be bought in on something like that. But I was curious, obviously, you and I have talked with Cody and Luke a lot. I'm down for him to pinch hit for Hayward in the 4th inning, for Wisdom to come in and hit a tank, right? Sign me up for that. But do you get the sense that players even like Hayward are bought in because they kind of just understand that that's how this roster is constructed? Obviously I'm into it, but you do watch that and you kind of wonder from afar, Hayward's a veteran, he drew a start, probably hoping to play more than 3 innings. This is pretty aggressive from David Ross to say, hey, this is a better matchup. This is a big moment in this game and we're going to go for it. Sorry, dude.
Yeah, and Ross addressed that this morning actually, where he's like, he was a player, and he's he's like, I got pinch hit for a lot when I was playing, whether it was like there was a closer in the game and they needed a better bat in or whatever. So he got pinch hit for a lot. He's like, so in that way, I can relate to Jason Hayward. So when as a former player and now as the manager, I try to relate to what he's like. I know it sucks, and I tell him that it sucks, but that's we gave him the one at bat against the lefty. He got out. Now we like the matchup with Wisdom in there, so we're gonna throw him in. And that's what Ross is like. Just be transparent about that, be upfront, and try to relate to the player, because everyone knows that it sucks. No one wants to get pinch hit for. But at the same time, he said that it kind of goes to, and this, what anyone will tell you this on the Cubs, but it goes to the leadership and the professionalism that Jason Hayward kind of displays on that team. Where you saw it already with him moving to center field gracefully, no issue moving to center field. So Seiya Suzuki can play right field, regardless of the amount of Gold Gloves that Jason Hayward has. He moved to center field without an issue. So it just, and then getting taken out in the fourth inning or whatever it is after one at bat for Patrick Wisdom, and then he's not even playing. He's not even a center fielder or even an outfielder really. But yeah, so he's like, it just plays with that professionalism that Jason Hayward has. And Ross is like, yeah, he's in there. He's still cheering for the team. Patrick Wisdom hits that home run and he's high-fiving him. I think Jason Hayward understands, and I think you've seen it regardless of, I know Corey's feelings on Jason Hayward batting, but you see just the way he kind of has taken over this locker room as a leader, and a lot of the players look up to him. And so he's setting that example for a lot of these guys, like, hey, I'm a World Series champion, a however many time All-Star, 13-year veteran, and Ross takes me out in the fourth inning. I'm okay with it as long as we win, right? So that's just been Hayward, and you can just tell that the rest of the players on the team, the coaches, they all value that. And so when you see a guy like with Hayward's pedigree being willing to move to center field, being willing to get pinch hit for in the fourth inning, being willing to cheer on the team the rest of the time after getting pinch hit for, it does set that good example for the rest of the team. So, that's what Ross said. Again, he's like, I know it sucks to get pinch hit for, because it's happened to me a lot, but that also just shows just how much a professional and how much Hayward cares about the team, whatever's best for the team, just on any given night.
Yeah, well, hey, I mean, good to hear it. I mean, I was curious just because we knew that this roster construction was kind of going to lend itself to that. If Ross was going to really maximize this roster, you probably have to be aggressive with a lot of the matchups, a lot of guys who probably shouldn't be out there for every type of pitcher or every handedness, stuff like that. So, yeah, I was just curious about that. But yeah, that's some good insight that he's spoken about that, and everybody seems to be on board with that. But yeah, we can we'll let you go, Ryan. We appreciate the insights live from Wrigley Field, and hopefully you can get home not too late here. Oh, well, yeah, hopefully like at 10:45, 11 p.m. Central Time, we'll be done. But yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Take care. I can't wait to listen to the show. Of course, and you can catch all of Ryan's writing at allchgo.com. Make sure you sign up to become a member to read all of his good stuff.
Okay, so if you're wanting to make some potential money, the Bulls are up 14 right now at halftime. So they're up 63-49. The live spread is Milwaukee +5. And, if you want to make some money, maybe that's the way to do it. I actually made some money on the Cubs win against Tampa Bay. I bet the under on 8 runs. I was watching the first 4 innings. I'm like, you know what? It's cold. Bats are not going to get warmed up, and I won some money. I usually don't win much money betting baseball because I get too emotional with some of my bets. I'm like, oh yeah, Justin Steele's going to throw a perfect game today, and he doesn't do that. So, right. That's my problem with this. That's why I was curious where you were going with saying you bet on the Cubs, but yeah, as I've mentioned before, I'm not the biggest gambler, but I did sign up with PointsBet because, of course, we are sponsored by them. And I can tie this into the Cubs real easy. If you want my pick of the week, Zach Davies pitches for the Diamondbacks tomorrow. So the Nationals are at home. Go with the Nationals. Zach Davies 0-1 with a 5.8 ERA on the year. We know him well. That's maybe up that name on this podcast, Corey. Maybe you said his name. Well, I'm trying to make people money. understand, but like you're making me upset.
I'm talking
like,
about him in a derogatory way. I think that's
I don't even want to hear his name. I don't even want to think about him, even in a derogatory.
That's my pick of the week. If you want to, you can, sort of get out some of that, negative energy you had for him last year by watching him lose to the Nationals on Thursday. So I think that's the way to go. And of course, remember 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000 when you sign up at PointsBet with code CHGO. If you're watching on YouTube, it is right there in the corner. So
hold on, before you go on, someone's like mentioning former second baseman for this team that we cannot be bringing up these names.
And Carlos, I think, is a longtime listener, so I think he knows better than to use that name.
Lawrence,
yeah,
what are you doing here?
No, Lawrence is going to get yelled at for putting that up
Lawrence,
there.
Lawrence, I'll have to catch you up to speed.
If you're listening, if you're listening if you're listening on the audio feed, you guys know the second baseman's name that's coming up. We're not going to say it though, but if you're watching on YouTube,
we're not saying it. It's on the screen, but we're not saying it. I'm allowed to put that on there.
You can't bet against him, so we're going to stick to betting against Zach Davies when you go to PointsBet. But Brendan, I want to go back to, just to wrap up, I want to talk about Kyle Hendricks, and if you have any, we touched on Stroman with Ryan a little bit, but I want to talk quickly about Patrick Wisdom and Frank Schwindel continuing to have a good, stretch here. And it's interesting for as bad as the numbers looked, especially for Patrick in those first few series. He's now sitting, and again, it's still too early for any of this, but he's sitting with a 136 WRC plus. All of a sudden, he is well above league average in terms of his offensive production. When we spoke, I think 2 series ago, it was a negative number. So that's how quickly this stuff can turn. And especially when you come in and hit 2 home runs in a series, right? And you have the series that he did in Colorado, things can turn around really quickly. And a similar story for Frank, who had a really nice series. He had a double in the game on Wednesday before it got called with an RBI. 112 WRC plus, so a little bit above league average there. And again, both of them, we talked about them a few series ago, like, not to be concerned, but just you're watching their performance, obviously, right? And just like that, things turn around, and you would take the production that they're producing, that line you would take from each of them going forward on the season here.
Yeah, one thing with Patrick is I'm still monitoring that contact rate, because as we've talked about last year, the contact rate was in the bottom 2nd percentile of the league at 60%. So right now, it's almost 72%. We're approaching 50 plate appearances. If you talk to some, baseball stat people, they do say when you get to around 50 plate appearances, the reliability starts to improve, and the ability to interpret that particular sample as mostly attributable to the player himself rather than noise is appropriate. But still a lot more baseball left, still more at bats, still more changes he's going to make. But I do think at this point, forget the stability numbers and those thresholds and all those numbers. You can just look at the at bats, and he does look different. And the ability and the intent for him to make more contact, at least on my end as I watch these games, it's obvious. And when you match that with what he's been saying he wants to do, which is to adjust and make more contact, it's lining up. So I do feel comfortable at this point saying that he has made a change that is translating to more contact. It's just a matter of that type of change in approach will still be conducive to hitting for power and base hits. We've seen in years past so many different Cubs players, especially part of that last core, go through changes and stretches that led to more contact but didn't lead to better run production. And as an example, we can look at Kyle Schwarber, who made a lot more contact, but the overall run production didn't come to fruition with the Cubs. Now he's with a different team. Of course, he's having more success. So just because you make more contact, it does not mean it's a good thing for some guys. But at least right now, monitoring Patrick's contact rate, seeing the power start to show up, it's pretty encouraging. And it's still early.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that Luke and Cody and I talked about after the first game in that Rocky series on the post game was that, it's still early for these guys, even now that their numbers look good. But the whole point of this season was to give them a shot and see what you had. You unearthed some pretty interesting stuff. Frank had an incredible finish to the season last year. Patrick set your franchise rookie home run record. And you didn't go out and sign major replacements that you need to give playing time to. You don't have those young guys ready at those positions. So the patience was warranted. Like, see what you have. And like, that's still true even now that the numbers look better. Like, the whole point was to give this time and see if, hey, we found ourselves a Max Muncy or something like that, like where we brought in a guy who hadn't caught on anywhere else. And we figured something out here. So you still have to give it that time. And I'm glad that Patrick was so quickly able to kind of quell some of that, like, like Justin Turner, another example, like late bloomers, you figure something out. And I'm glad that Patrick was able to turn things around quickly, because some of the online discussion about him, like some concerns are warranted. But some of it, people ready to give up on him after 6 games or 9 games. It's like, this is a little crazy.
It's too early. Yeah, I mean, it's with some Justin Turner 2.0. This is no, disrespect to wisdom. It's just more so pointing out how good Turner is.
That would be a wonderful outcome. Yeah.
I mean, you're getting like a long-term all-star if that's the case. With Turner, the underlying traits were there. He's like, his numbers look like Ben Zobrist in terms of plate discipline. So he makes contact around 85% of the time. His chase rate is always well above league average. Patrick is below league average in both those categories. So those two traits tend to be most predictive of offensive success until Patrick kind of makes those strides, which he's doing right now, while maintaining the power. It's really, really ambitious to say he could be, a breakout-esque player in the same tier as Justin Turner, because as we know, those types of players don't really exist. There's a reason why Justin Turner is always mentioned in the same breath as like, Jose Bautista, or even like a little bit later, like Josh Donaldson. Those types of players typically don't adjust well after coming through the league and struggling.
Yeah. And, but again, like if you found in Patrick someone who can mash to the level that he can, and we saw it in this series against the Rays, that's pretty valuable. And with the aggressiveness that you're seeing from Ross, to go back to that pinch hit, I love that from David Ross. I love it, right? There's some stuff that I haven't loved from David Ross. There's stuff that I love, and I love that. And it has nothing to do with Hayward. It has to do with this roster was built, as we were talking about before we let Ryan go, with a lot of guys that just shouldn't be out there 162 games, 9 innings a game, no matter who they're facing, right? In years past, we've gotten used to Cubs teams that were built that way. You pencil in 7 guys, 8 guys on a given day, and you just let it ride for 160 games. It's pretty easy, right? Like Bryant's your third baseman, Baez is at short, Zobrist is at second, it's easy. This is not that group. And the way for them to be successful requires David Ross to be aggressive like that and not let guys play just because they started. The Rays are throwing all sorts of pitchers at you. It's the way you have to manage this. So I was really happy to see that. And good for Patrick and good for David Ross that it worked out. They deserved that outcome. Like, that was a good, aggressive, let's win this game now or get back in the game type moment. And it worked out for them. And they deserve that. It's good when the process yields good results. Good process, good results, right?
Yeah. And in the process too, it's pretty obvious what they're trying to do. And they're trying to maximize the hitting matchups with the pitchers as best as possible. So if we just go to the number of at-bats each one of these hitters have received, it's pretty equally distributed, relatively speaking. So you have, Seiya and Wilson and Happ all around 40 plate appearances, but then even VR has 30 plate appearances. This is before the numbers are updated after the last game, by the way. But VR has 30 plate appearances. Frazier has 25. Ortega has almost 30 plate appearances. Hayward's actually a little bit lower on the list, surprisingly. He has 21 plate appearances. Hayward has fewer plate appearances than Clint Frazier, for example. But of course, Hayward's starting the majority of games. So you do see the intent at least, and just looking and trying to scale up how many plate appearances these guys will get over the course of a 162 game year, it is starting to shape out to look very Giants-esque in terms of splitting apart your entire roster and giving equal plate appearances. Ross is clearly trying to do that. Will it work? We'll find out, but I do like the intent at this point.
So a couple guys on offense, and then just any thoughts you have on Hendricks, and then we'll sign off here. But I do want to give due credit to Ian Happ, 1 for 3 on Wednesday, before the game got called. 132 WRC plus on the season for him. And he's also having more success than we've seen hitting from the right side. And if you look at the numbers, that carried over from last year, like he's in a really good stretch. And, he maybe gets, I don't want to say forgotten, but maybe lost in the shuffle a little bit because of the struggles he had at the beginning of the year. But we've talked about him as well. Like he's a first round pick. He's in his mid-20s. Like him looking more like this player and the guy we saw in the second half, that's a big deal for the Chicago Cubs. And Marquee had a good graphic that they put up on the screen tonight. The OPS leaders in all of Major League Baseball since August 17th of last year, with a minimum of 200 plate appearances. 1 through 4 is Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, Jose Ramirez, and Paul Goldschmidt. Number 5 in all of baseball is Ian Happ with a 1024 OPS. That's, it's over 200 plate appearances. Like it's early in the year here, but if he can carry that over and be, over 1,000 OPS would be just wonderful. So I'm not expecting that. But if that's the type of player that the Cubs have, like that's a big deal. And I want to make sure we give him proper credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happ turning into a sustainable hitter for this team changes a lot of the decisions they may end up making to fill that Happ role if he were not to succeed this year. So we talked with Michael Cerami about this during the season preview pod about a lot of these players determining Jed Hoyer's next route to competitiveness, and Happ being a sustainable hitter would be huge for this team. For me, I think for you too, Corey, you want to see Happ do this for a larger play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So he has
gone throw out that first portion last year either.
You have to consider everything. And, you still have to consider the hot stretch during that second half. But he has gone through these extremes, both on the positive and on the negative end. And what is the underlying problem with the negative extreme is kind of hard to tell. And I don't think we're ever going to truly know just from like a fan's perspective and the data that we do have. But the hitting coaches and those who have worked with Happ, they may have an idea, and maybe those types of changes, although it's kind of hard to see, maybe those changes are being made and he can turn into a sustainable hitter. So with Happ, I'm not going to lie, it was so frustrating watching some of those extreme stretches that I kind of just assumed and expected we'll get more extremes. And that's still a possibility at this point, but it is hard to ignore what he's doing, Corey. Just like this has got to be like the third or fourth time now in his career where he looks so good at the plate. And then for whatever reason, something happens and it goes the complete opposite direction. So I'm hoping that I don't fall into this. Yeah.
And again, we would be remiss. I'm wearing the shirt, there's not too much we can continue to say about Seiya Suzuki that we haven't already said, but I wanted to read your tweet from this morning. It'll change a little bit with a couple of at-bats tonight, but it won't change much. Weighted on base average, Seiya Suzuki, number 1 in baseball, number 1 in expected weighted on base average. So if you look at those expected metrics, how the ball's hit, launch angle, things like that, still number 1. Chase rate, the lowest in baseball. Walk rate, the highest in baseball. Batting average, 3rd in baseball. Like, it's unbelievable. He's also on the second longest on base streak to start the Cubs' career, to start their career since 1906. Wilson Contreras had the longest one. Seiya's close on that. So we could spend all hour just gushing about him, but it's nothing we haven't said before. He's incredible. The plate discipline is incredible. Anything on Kyle Hendricks real quick? We're at an hour here, and then run through the probables for Pittsburgh here.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, same type of conversation that we had with Stroman can be applied to Hendricks. Hendricks is getting whiffs on his changeup, though. He got 8 more whiffs on that changeup. In his first start to open the season, he got 12 whiffs. He's getting more whiffs. The problem last year was that his whiff rate on the changeup was cut in half from his typical range. That changeup got hammered. That was the issue. The velocity was normal. The sinker, the sequencing was what you would expect from years past. But for some reason, that changeup just was not working. We have seen Kyle lead with changeups and throw that pitch the most of any of his other pitches and starts. In this one against the Rays, he threw the changeup the third most behind his sinker and his four seam. So he threw a changeup only 20% of the time. So he did lead with a sinker and four seam. And I'm wondering if that's just because the hitters he faced, they were unfamiliar to Kyle, so he was able to get away with throwing more fastballs. We'll see the reason for that, and that changeup usage does start to spike up here again. But I mean, it's
you will tell everybody when it is time, if or when it is time to be concerned about either him or Marcus Stroman, but that time is not now.
I will. Yeah, okay. I mean,
it's
just not. It's April 20th. It's 4/20. So
and like it was. Relax 40 degrees for most of these starts. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's crazy. All right. So previewing the series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So we have the first game of this 4-game set on Thursday starting. I hate these start times, Corey. I know we mentioned it last time. 6:40 p.m. Central. Just started at 7:05 again. You're killing the West Coast.
They're trying to get folks like Ryan home before 4 a.m.
I missed the first 3 innings of every game. It's completely unacceptable, Corey. They gotta go. Yeah, that is a poor thing. So it's ridiculous. All right. So who's pitching this game? You have Leiter Jr. For the Cubs, and you have Bry Wilson for the Pirates. And then on Friday we have this one, your afternoon game. So your Friday afternoons are back at Wrigley. You have a 1:20 p.m. start time. You have Smiley on the mound. We're facing Quintana again. So we have Q back on the mound for the Pirates at Wrigley Field. You can already figure out how that one's going to turn out. Okay. And then where are we here? My phone is freezing up. So then on Saturday, we have another afternoon start time, 1:20 p.m. We have Kyle Hendricks back on the mound, hoping to rebound off of some of these starts that have some people concerned. We have Thompson on the mound for the Pirates. And then to finish off this 4-game set, we have another 1:20 p.m. start time on Sunday. We have Brubaker on the mound for Pittsburgh. He's 0-2 with a 7.3 ERA. And then Justin Steele back out there for the Cubs, hoping to have some more success, rebounding at this little bit of a rough start here. On the year, Steele is 1-1 with a 4.5 ERA. Specifically for Steele, and then I'll turn it over to you, Corey. Steele's had some good run prevention numbers in the first few starts. His first start, fastball command gave him that success. Second start, fastball command was not good. Slider was really good. The most recent start didn't really have either. So you're hoping for this one, you tie in the fastball command, you tie in that breaking stuff command, and the results are better. And maybe he can go into the 6th inning this time and give the bullpen a little bit more of a break.
Yeah, I mean, so, potentially a little bit of rain in 2 of these games, so hopefully they can get them all in. But it's pretty simple for me. Like, you split that series in Pittsburgh, which is okay. But as we talked about a lot, you got to take advantage of playing the Pirates. This team has shown the ability to be competitive, have some fight, and at least in the early going here, you're hoping that they can continue that and play for the division or a wild card spot, whatever. If you're going to do that, you have to beat the Pittsburgh Pirates. You've got them for 4 at home. The weather is finally a little bit of rain, but we're going to get into the 60s, the 70s, if you can believe it, here in Chicago.
They come
You got to beat the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's you can never ask them. Sweeping a team is tough. Everybody's a Major League Baseball team, right? But you have to win a series against the Pirates if you expect to be competitive in the long term here. So that's what we're looking for. So we will leave you with that. A lot to talk about, even though we only had kind of 2.5 games. As always, tomorrow, tune in for the pregame and your postgame with Luke, Cody, and I think Ryan will be joining them as well. So don't miss that. And don't forget tonight, if you're listening to this on Wednesday night live, don't forget to tune in to the postgame show here on the YouTube for the Bulls game with our guys, Matt and Big Dave. However that plays out, they will be animated and excellent as always. So if you are a Bulls fan, tune into that. Don't forget to support all that we're doing at CHGO. You can become a member for the premium written content at allchgo.com. You get access to the members only Discord, live shows, post-game shows, podcasts, and great written content at allchgo.com. Lawrence was just joining us there on the YouTube with the Bulls hat. Best of luck to all of you Bulls fans. I'm not really a basketball guy, I must admit, but I live in Chicago, so we always support Chicago. And
come on, Corey, see red. All right, be good.
Hey,
let's go.
You were telling people to look at the Bucks, second half. So
I was just saying. If you're
we're just trying to make people
person.
money on points bet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, over here.
But
Bulls up 14. 5 minutes to go in the third. It's looking good. I don't know. I'm a little concerned. It's not that I'm not paying full attention to you guys, by the way, but it is.
There is a Bulls playoff game. Yeah. We understand. We're talking about a rain out for the Cubs in April, but we appreciate all of you joining us on the YouTube. And if you are listening to this on the podcast feed, as always, thank you for listening and go Cubs.